Welcome. My name is Donald Farmer, and I work for QlikTech. And I'm here today to talk to you about business discovery. And business discovery is, I guess it's a new way of talking about business intelligence. I've been working in business intelligence for over 20 years, different jobs, different roles. Started as a consultant, built some products, worked at Microsoft for 10 years on their business intelligence products. Now I work at QlikTech for the last few months. And I'm seeing a change in the business intelligence market and in the way in which we do business intelligence. And as I say, I've been around for a long time, over 20 years doing this. I remember when we called business intelligence decision support. Actually, it's a much better name. But then the marketing guys got to it and it became business intelligence because that sounded fancier. And now we're talking about business discovery. And is that just another marketing term? Well, to me it's not. It actually reflects a very important change, not only in the market, and not only in the way people are using business intelligence, but in the way, the whole relationship of business users to technology. I wanted to start by taking a quote from Gartner, who said that these demanding business users are increasingly driving BI purchasing decisions. Now that's a really important change. That's not a change in the way they use BI. It's not a change in the BI tools. It's how they buy the tools. And think of that. Previously, people who purchased BI decisions, it was IT departments. It was IT departments who understood the server requirements. It was IT departments who understood the storage requirements. It was IT departments who understood how all the data sources would work together and the compatibility of all the different pieces that had to go together to make a BI solution. And Gartner are saying, no, it's changing. It's BI users who are changing how to buy the BI software. And that's a tremendous change. After all, they always say follow the money. Well, if people are making the decisions, the buying decisions are changing, that's a very critical change in the market. And they go on, they say it's not just that they're making these decisions, they're making them and choosing data discovery tools rather than traditional tools, and they're doing that with or without IT's consent. Now that's a huge change. IT used to buy these tools because they understood the servers, they understood the storage, they understood the data, they understood the compatibilities. And these business users are saying, just give me the tools. I don't care what you think. I don't care if you say no, I'm going to buy them. And that's a huge change. Now, it's not just a change in BI. If this was just happening in the BI market, I'd say, well, this is a little freaky thing that's happened. But actually, it's changing all over the technology world. It's happening with iPads. Do you know that 90% of iPads are bought by individuals, people who just buy them themselves? They're not bought by businesses. 90% of them are just bought by individuals, but 60% of them are used in business. In other words, people are buying their own business technology. That never used to happen. Used to be you went and joined a company and they gave you a laptop or they gave you a desktop and they put the software on it and they configured it. And now people are buying their own devices and taking them to work and using them. It's happening with hardware, it's also happening with software. And what I wanted to kind of talk to you about today was, well, who are these users who are doing this crazy thing? Who are these users who are changing the whole way in which we use technology and business intelligence? And what is this discovery thing they're doing? We call it business discovery, Gartner call it data discovery. What are they discovering? What's the difference? And then, if this is happening, how are your businesses going to change? And how are your customers' businesses going to change? Because surely this is a huge change. So let's start with who are these business users. And I think of them as starting as consumers. Now a consumer for me is simply any one of you here when you go home. When you leave the office and you're at home and you're with your wife, you're with your kids, you're with your family, you're watching television, you're playing sport, at that point you're a consumer. You're not making business decisions, you're just making personal decisions. And my argument is that those consumers are changing. Our consumer behavior is changing in very important ways. And I want to talk about 4 ways that it changes. about search, social applications, apps, the app experience, and mobility. And let's start with search, because that's the easiest one. Search is the #1 way in which we integrate data and work with data today. Today, if you could see my desktop on my laptop, it's just covered with icons. I don't have anything organized into folders. You look at my email, no folders, just email in my inbox. How do I find things? I search. That's the way I interact with data. I used to organize everything into hierarchies and taxonomies. Now I just search. And you know something? I'm just as efficient or inefficient as I ever was. Search works for me. Search is the easiest user experience you can imagine. Here are 3 search engines. One from Hong Kong, one from China, one from Thailand. Well, Google you recognize. But the other 2 are search engines, and they have exactly the same user interface. It's a box for entering text, and it's a button to search. It couldn't be simpler. Actually, Google have 2 buttons, but that's because they're Google. We're the market leader. They can get 2 buttons. But what is important here is it's very simple, but it's also very fast. And it has to be fast, because it doesn't just give you what you want. You have to be able to find what you want in the answers. So, as you probably know, I work for QlikTech, and QlikTech's headquarters are in Lund, down southern Sweden. And so when I first went to Lund, I was looking for hotels, so I put into Google Lund hotels. And how many do I get? I get 780,000. Now, I know there are not 780,000 hotels in Lund, but of course I get results from many different sites. So now I have to find the better one. So I put business hotel in Lund, and it comes back with, maybe 100,000. So now I put cheap business hotel in Lund, it comes back with nothing. So now I have to go back and try and find I'm Scottish, I was always looking for the cheap one. So now you're trying to resolve your results, and the only way you can do this is because the software is simple and the software is fast. It's not actually very helpful. Now, the next part of this is how do I decide which button to click on, which link to click on, which one do I follow? And this is where search becomes really important to understand the new consumer. Because what I'm doing there when I follow a link is exactly the same as, let's go back to the earliest days of human beings and hunters looking for food. When a hunter looks for food, what do? They find tracks, they find trails, and they follow those trails until they find something. Or if they don't find something, they come back and they start searching again. They're doing exactly the same thing I do when I search. And we actually call this, in information science, we call the link that you see in Google, we say, does it give you good information scent? Does it smell good? Now what does that mean? It means that when I see a link in Google, if I follow that, will I find something good? How do I know I'm going to find something good? The same way as the hunter knows from experience and from picking up information what they are following. This guy is an information worker in his environment. He is following all the information leads and all the information trails to find what he needs. We, in our societies and in our technologies, we are hunters working within our environment. And in order to do that, you need tools which enable you to have a hypothesis, have an idea of what you're looking for, find the tracks of that and follow it, and very importantly, if you don't find it, to revise your decision and trace again. It's exploration. And exploration is essential to business discovery. And the nice thing is, it's a very basic human skill that we bring into work. However, it's not just about hunter-gatherers and search. When I was at university, there was always one guy who was better at finding books than I was. I don't know what it was. Was it the color of the book, the name of the author, the title, the blurb? He could always find books to do his essays that were better than mine. He was better at finding information and information searching than I was. He brought those skills into the library. We bring those skills into our work with Google and search engines today. Now, the next aspect I want to talk about is social. And that gets really important because So I used to work at Microsoft and was there for 10 years, and I would love to say that the main competitor to Google is Microsoft Bing, our search engine that we built. And I have many friends who still work on that product. But it's not. The main competitor to all these guys, Google and Baidu and any other search engine, isn't another search engine. It's actually social technology, like Facebook and Twitter. And why is that? Well, when I was searching for that hotel in London, I eventually narrowed it down to 50,000 different links. How did I find the one I wanted? I didn't go through 50,000 links. I finally just mailed people at QlikTech and say, I'm coming to Lund next week, where should I stay? And they gave me the answer. It actually turns out that search is very good for doing research and finding the information space, but it's not very good for making decisions. And when you make decisions, especially in the internet world, what people are thinking of is you make a decision to buy something. And if you make a decision to buy something, then that's where people want to advertise. So if people are using Facebook and Twitter to make purchasing decisions, that's where the advertising money goes. And that's why Google are worried about it. So the real competitor to search is social. And that's because we're not just hunters, we're actually social animals too, and we learn from our colleagues. Within business, we can use Facebook as a tool to interact with people. We can use maybe Salesforce Chatter or other tools. And we can also just walk down the corridor and talk to a bunch of colleagues about our decision making. But we rarely make a decision ourselves without including other people in that process. One of my friends from another company in the US has this great saying that people do not trust data, they trust other people. So if I give you a spreadsheet that predicts the growth of my business over the next 2 years, do you trust it? Well, that really depends on whether you trust me. It doesn't matter. You're not going to go into every calculation in the spreadsheet and make sure it's correct. You're not going to look at every cell and press F2 and look at the formula to see if it's accurate. You just trust me. Does he build good predictions or not? Does he build good reports? If somebody gives you a data set, do you go in and audit the metadata and the lineage and try and understand it? Or do you say, no, that came from my IT department and I trust them? In fact, for me, when I'm talking to customers about data quality, I rarely talk about data quality as a technical subject, although honestly, it's a fascinating technical subject. But what I talk about is data reputation. Not how good is your data, but do people trust your data? You can have data which is technically accurate, but if your users don't trust it, what's the point? They won't use it. So it's a very social aspect to this, of how we trust and how we make decisions. So in addition to having a technology which is simple and fast and enables you to explore, you also need a social aspect of that, and if you could bring that together in technology, even better. Now the third part of this, the behavior that consumers have, is the app experience. And for that, we should talk a little bit about the iPhone, because when I say app, everybody thinks about the social app. So I have an iPhone, and I have to say, of course I have an iPhone, but it's the first thing you do when you leave Microsoft is you buy an iPhone. Unless you go to Nokia, in which case you can't. But, so I have an iPhone, and I love it. It's a great tool. Now look at the things I do on my iPhone. I have a calendar, I have email, I have note-taking, I have a task list, and all of these things help me to organize myself. I have a blog reader, so in my idle moments I can read blogs. Do you know, it's kind of strange, because on my desktop I have all these things as well, and I have them in one application, which is called Outlook. Outlook is one application which provides all these functions. On the iPhone, it's 5 or 6 different apps. And each app is focused on just solving one problem. Now, it's great at solving that problem. It's a beautiful user interface which solves just one problem. So by the time you add it up, and after a few weeks of owning an iPhone, you end up with something like this, where you have apps for every possible function. Now, IT departments get worried, and they say, well, these apps are, how can you manage having all these apps? It's much better to have one application which is integrated. But here's what IT departments forget. If I have Outlook on my desktop, And I have notes, and I have messaging, and I have email, and I have blog readers. It's all driven at the back end by Microsoft Exchange. That's the software which drives it. That's the software which provides the data and services which keep my email and my contacts and all these things going. On the iPhone, although I go in and I swap out different applications, and I have the calendar I like and the note-taking app I like, you know what? In my company, because we use Exchange, it's still driven by Exchange at the back end. IT are still providing data and services, but the consumer experience is completely different because I can choose the experience that suits me. And the app-like experience for consumers is exactly like that. They choose the interface and the tool that suits them, and they don't really care about the back-end system. They may use Gmail because it's convenient, but that's not because they've made some carefully calibrated IT decision. It's just because that's convenient for them. It's all about convenience and the experience that works for me personally. So apps are focused, apps are personal, and apps are shared. How do I get an app? When I joined QlikTech and I got my iPhone, I wanted an app for working with Salesforce, which is one of the applications we use. So I spoke to my IT department and said, how do I use Salesforce? Where do I get the Salesforce app? And they said, oh, you go to the Apple Store and download it. Now, everybody in my company uses Salesforce, but IT cannot even give me that application. I have to go and get it myself. It's completely my experience. I can choose to use it or I can choose not to use it. Now, talking about apps and iPhones and so on, to talk about mobility. Mobility is really interesting. I mean, mobility is all about iPad today. I know there's other tablets coming, I know there's other tablets out there, but honestly, it's all about iPad. And as I said earlier, one of the important things about iPad is that people acquire this themselves. They go out and buy it themselves, and they love it, they're enthusiastic about it. And they say, I want this technology. Now, when people go out and acquire technology themselves, that really changes the way the business runs. Now, I'm not talking here about, you'll sometimes hear people say that businesses are changing because young people are entering the business world with new technologies and new expectations. And I'll tell you, that's true, but that's not what changes business. Young people are coming in, but they're not the decision makers. They're not the people who change strategy. When the chief executive gets an iPad, that changes strategy. When the chief executive gets an iPad and says, I just want this to work in my email, the IT department are not going to turn around and say, no, we can't help you. They'll say, okay, let's make it work. When Barack Obama was elected president, he had a BlackBerry, and the Secret Service in the US said, you can't use that. And you know what? He got elected, and within a few days they changed their policy, and now he uses his BlackBerry. Because he is the chief executive of the country. So when senior people make these decisions, then it changes the way business work. And you know what happens? Senior people are making those decisions. Senior people are making those technology decisions. What Gartner said, it wasn't just business users. It was senior, important, influential, and vocal business users who were choosing new BI tools. And they are changing the way we do business. The other thing about mobile is not just for people who are wandering around. Mobile is for the desktop too. You use mobile not when you go to the next country or the next city, you use it when you go to the next office, when you go to the next cubicle, when you go for lunch. It's about having information with you. Howard Dresner, a former Gartner analyst, has said that in 3 years, 25% of all BI will be on mobile devices. Not only that, it will only be on mobile devices. That's the only way it will be used. It won't be that I have BI on my desktop and on my mobile device. I'll only have it on my mobile device. And that's a huge change. So, here are the technologies that people are using in the consumer world. Let's bring this into the business world and see what they're doing at Discovery. Gartner have said this. They put this up on the board. It's the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And we love the Magic Quadrant because now QlikTech are a leader in the Magic Quadrant. And that changes a lot of things for us. And what Gartner have said is we are leading the way in a new end-user-driven approach to BI, which is great, except I hate that sentence. There's one word in there that I hate, and it's really important to get this across. There are no end users anymore. End users have come to an end. There used to be end users of BI because people would get reports and analysis. They couldn't do anything with them. They got a printout, they got a chart, they got a dashboard, that was it. But in the modern BI world, there are no end users. Do you know what people do with reports when they get them today from Business Objects and Cognos and MicroStrategy and Microsoft? First thing they do, export to Excel and let me do something else. These tools have become expensive ETL tools for Excel users. And it's not that they're bad tools, it's just that users always want to go further. Business users always want to do more, so they're not at the end of any process. The technology need has to be simple, has to be fast. And so we put a lot of work into making it simple and fast. And in QlikTech we have this idea of what we call association. And association, just in the same way as search works on a kind of basic human level, association tries to work basic human skills as well. You know, when you join QlikTech, you always see, if you look outside at our stand, you'll see these colors, green, white, and grey everywhere. After a few months, you see them in your sleep. We even have them on our jackets and our coffee cups and everything, you know. And you also use the letter Q for everything. It wears out on my keyboard now. But the green, white, and grey means something. With our application, what you select is green, what's associated with that is white, and what's not associated with grey is grey. Now, that's straightforward, but let's give you an example. If I select a customer and I want to see what that customer bought, then the customer is in green and the products they bought are in white. Now, I can tell you, any BI tool in the world can do that. It better, otherwise you've wasted your money. Here's the customers, here's what they bought. But what we do rather uniquely is we show, here's what they didn't buy. Now, if you're a salesperson, knowing what the customer didn't buy is actually kind of pretty interesting. And the very first person I ever spoke to when I joined QlikTech, the first customer, was a doctor. And that's interesting, not an administrator, not a technical person, but a doctor. And he said, I built an app I built an app, not a report, not a chart, but an app, where I could take hospital procedures and see the drugs that were used. But QlikTech uniquely showed the drugs that were not used. And what that meant was the doctor could make a discovery. He could discover that here was a cheap, safe, reliable drug that wasn't being used. That wasn't the question he asked. But he made a new discovery that he could follow. He got news sent, extra information sent that no other tool could give him. Now we provide integration and searching and visualizing to make that possible. But the really significant thing is this additional information sent. And what he produced wasn't a report, it wasn't analysis, it was an app. Reports are static, you just look at them. Dashboards you can kind of interact with. I always like to think of the dashboard as having an explain button. Show me what's behind this number. But apps are more about exploration. And if I build a report like this, to a limited extent you can filter in it. If I build a dashboard, you could click on it and drill in and see the number. But if I build an app, I'm really giving something that if I discover something and I build an app with it, I can give it to you and you can make your own discoveries. Because the user interface is specialized for that one subject area and for that one problem. It's just like an app on the iPhone. And you can explore customer trends, you can explore profitability, and you can make your own discoveries, not just the discovery that I made. I'm giving you an app for your discoveries too. And then we have the searching, to go back and forward. I find something, I follow my train of reasoning. It's exactly the way I do in Google as I'm searching and narrowing down my search. In the same way I can follow a trail of thinking in this tool. And if it leads nowhere, I just press clear and I start again and follow another trail of thinking. It's basic human information foraging within a business intelligence tool. It becomes a hunter again, information hunter. Shared and social is also critical because that's the way we make decisions. And so we have within our environment a way of building what's effectively like a wiki for discussing documents and sharing documents. Because if I want to give you a discovery, it's one thing to give you the application you can use to use that, to give you an app, but then it's another thing for us to have a discussion about that app. How is it being used? What did I discover? What did you discover? What should we do with it next? And adding that social dimension means that business intelligence is no longer just about a narrow scope of one person making a decision and passing it on to somebody else. It becomes a shared effort. Mobile is also part of this, because mobile, as I said, is not just about going on the road and around the cities. It's also about the information that you use at your desktop. Mobile is really just about having my information with me where I want to make a decision. There's some great examples of mobile apps that we can build, and a simple one is retail. If you're going around a store and you see as a store manager that there's a shelf empty, what does that mean? Well, it could mean that you've sold out. It could mean that the suppliers haven't delivered anything. It could mean that the product is no longer available. It could mean all sorts of things. It could be good news. The product's successful and is sold out. It could be bad news. They stopped making it and we've still got room on our shelf for it. You can't know. You can't know until you get back to your office and look it up and do some research. But you're going to see hundreds of those things as you walk around the store. So it's not a question of being very mobile. You just need to make a decision where you are. And that's where mobility really helps. So these things, bringing these new consumers into the enterprise and having them do this technology, really changes the enterprise. A traditional enterprise has decision-making driven by IT in the center, pushing data and analyses and reports out to the edges. In this scenario, there are end users who can go no further. But in our scenario, there are no more end users. Everyone is the start of a process. They're either the start of a decision-making process, they're the start of a data process because they share data with other people, they're the start of a new analytic process because they make their own discoveries. They're the start of a social process because they talk to people and you can capture that information about what they're talking about. But there are no end users in our environment. For IT, that simply implies some really significant changes. For one thing, they're no longer about providing all the analytics. They're more about providing the security and the services and the data that drive the analytic process. IT no longer have to understand every aspect of the business. They just need to understand the technologies that drive the business. They become the providers of services. And you know what? That's what they're trained to do. IT are not trained to be bankers or shop clerks or retail experts or insurance experts. They're trained to be IT people. And in this new world, they can be. They can focus on providing reliable, secure data and services and providing business users with the tools that enable them to do the exploration and discovery. You know, people often ask us about scalability and about security and about manageability of our systems. And we could talk all day about examples of that, but the easiest thing is just to give you names of companies who are doing this and saying there are major companies using this technology. This is not just small companies who are discovering this. This is not just small agile departments. There are major companies changing the way they do it. So, to summarize my vision of how business intelligence is different, there is a new class of consumer who are coming into business. They are learning skills outside of business which they are now bringing in to the business world. Technology skills and information processing skills. That leads to a new behavior with data, which is behavior of business discovery. That leads to a new kind of business, and frankly, in our world, we are the leader in that technology. We are the leading company who do this and enable this new type of business intelligence that we call business discovery. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I hope it's been interesting. You can mail me with any questions that you have on this on donald.farmer@QlikView.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, then feel free. I'll follow you back, and you can find me there. It's social as well. And thank you very much for your time and attention.